Well, thanks and praises continue to the Most High King Selassie, Jah, Rastafari, and Empress Menenai. Yeah, man, give thanks to the uprising, you know. But then say, this thing bring a fear. And said, tomorrow, are you sure you will be there? But yeah, you have to give thanks. From even before this thing forward, you should have give thanks for this thing. Yeah, this thing you're not sure, you see. But yeah, there's a Father Joe the Ghetto Diplomat. You're in tune to the Daddy Marcus TV program. Meditation. Follow the money. Follow the money is a thing whereby it's a magazine on the scene, you see. Yeah. You say follow the financial matters of the earth. As you see, when you check the meditation of the thing, and we who say we are representing an imperial government in this modern time, a manifestation of that have to take on certain human characteristics. You understand what I said? Yeah, man, it have to visible because it's a government. Remember, it's a global thing. Remember, they think they brought down the thing and say, alright, then you have separate nations and they come together under one banner called the United Nations. So that's a global government right there. Just that this government, it doesn't seem to have the authority to dispose the credentials of the organization, you understand, or impose them as such. But yet still, there are others who display that power of the thing. Members of the said league, the said United Nations, and they've separated themselves into committees and councils and all sorts. The Security Council, made up of the most industrialized countries in the earth, and then I think they have some rotating thing whereby developing countries and other countries not in the G7 or wherever it is, that 5, the Security Council, yeah, them can hold a space in anything and contribute to the deliberations. But it's a gangster thing, obviously. So we understand, say the money have to be involved. The money are siphon off the money in a money and more and different one ways. More than one different way. Yeah. So we say we that draw for the first chapter of my life on Ethiopia's Progress, Volume 2, the autobiography of Emperor Haile Selassie the First, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So I think there are about 4 sections in this chapter. I think I'm gonna read the first 2. It's the debate and the resolution at Geneva, and Mussolini's speech against the covenant of the League of Nations. So you see, this is a momentous occasion within the globe. This is a global event. Yeah, it affects every man. And death is looming. You understand? The idea it causes war. Yeah, and the war done manifest already because hostilities have occurred. Yeah, and this is a draw the line type of thing whereby, okay, hostilities stop. I cease hostilities because that will only inflict pain on my people. So my thing is this, for the sake of my people, we say we join together in this thing. This is the forum for us to make these deliberations. I will speak to you directly about what is occurring in my country, Ethiopia, where my rights have been violated by another member of this organization. You understand? Without me having provoked him. Yeah, so this now pandemic, yeah, what them I say, it kind of stick up the place in that way. As we have said before, we never see the bombs and the bullets and these things. But the symptoms of the thing is, sure, there's a devastation certainly. You understand? Yeah. So what it is also symptomatic of is a global judgment that needs to be made. You understand? I said to you. And we say going forward with all the technologies that are bound, we say these technologies threaten to dismantle the conscience of man. You understand? And I deal with car. When you see there's things that you can utilize technology to achieve certain goals, whereby, you know, you come across like you're almost powerful than yourself. Because that is the thing. When I think the impression they're trying to give of these technologies is an improvement upon you, who have been created by the Most High. I don't think that is really true. Whatever they're trying to manifest in the physical must be a representation of what is inborn in you. You understand? So we find, say, like all the wireless communication, whereby them now intervene in this thing and say them a deal with communication, whereby them a wire the earth. You understand? Them a deal with, so that alright then people can communicate from distances. But surely that must have been a latent power within I and I as a human. So maybe our natural tendencies to even achieve these things, maybe these things are being blocked, these frequencies are being blocked with these technological things, because the bandwidth and all of these things, and how much hertz things are vibrate, and what position in the spectrum, what level of vibration, what hertz you're vibrating at. You understand? And that range from that to A to B and all of these things. Yeah. So even anything I'm manifesting at this thing, what them call all 5G. You understand? And then you have these stories to say that these things are detrimental to human health. It all shows that it can dismantle vegetation. Just like how this tree right in front of this, well, them two trees. Yeah, them look like one. More than all 2 3, what? Decent amount of tree, like all 4 or 5 tree. Yeah. So them have 2 different shades of green, and I saw the man I show you on one side nearest to the pole, the thing a cook, and look all tail like that side there, even though it's a flourishing tree that still. But yeah, contrasting the shade of green, it come like say one a prosper and one a suffer. And I saw the man I show you the vegetation next to this radiation pole, this 5G pole, or whatever pole that want be, it a carry some heat. You understand? I said to you. So we are saying follow the money. So when this judgment, you know, we don't know if we can get some insight as to the way forward in this thing. But we know for sure is that there's a whole heap of perspectives to the thing. One perspective is to follow the money. You understand? This is not the only perspective. You understand? But that part that we are work off of, because we are say an imperial government in reality, yeah, the thing must function so that it can monitor the people the proper way in terms of like what it should be. You don't know. So we believe, say, this thing here, even this event that we're gonna read of, it kinda authenticate the Lion of Judah as he that should speak on behalf of every human. You understand? Ideally, because what you find is this now. Within a community of nations, you're bound to get righteousness from the Lion of Judah, because he had been persecuted for who he is. You understand? Ideally, if you're gonna discredit all of those who occupy spaces of power, channels of power within the United Nations, you're gonna take away their power and invest it in the head of the United Nations, or if we say get rid of the United Nations and just think all the thing the Empire of Ethiopia, that means that all nations bound up to that, because I say it go. That is the concept that we're trying to achieve, and we hear that people are on the sidelines trying to divert the successes of that, the realities of that, into their own camp. So you know it's inevitable that man must have one government. Yeah, that's like natural, that coming like that's civilization. Or wherein lies the difference between us as a species? Now these people now are on the agenda of identifying other realities. They even want to classify it as other species of man because that's so wrong. You understand the deal? But these transformations, whereby okay, from one side of the thing, they might try to get me to act more robotic. So like digital, them have given me technology to kill in terms of like yeah. And even then them now merge me because no, they make these things part and parcel of my life. These technologies, it's like I can't do without them. Just like oh, it would be an impediment for me to not have a foot, just one, yeah. And that's how it go. But yeah, the real thing is just follow the money, yeah, man. So I'll go forward to this reading. Yeah. We were present at the 16th General Assembly of the League of Nations of Senate 23, 1928, June 30, 1936, to explain the fascist invasion of our country and the atrocity perpetrated on the people. The next day, Senate 24th, July 1, while the Assembly continued its deliberations, all the small nations that had placed confidence in the protection the League was proposed to provide were displeased at the backsliding exhibited in the treatment of Ethiopia's case, and some delegates openly criticized the League for deserting its fundamental objective. The Swedish envoy detailed the failure the League suffered as the result of its inability to save Ethiopia and presented the opinion of the Swedish public. The Irish envoy, Mr. De Valera, on his part, expressed his bitter grief. The envoy of New Zealand, Sir James Parr, voiced his painful feelings of despair, proposed placing heavy sanctions on Italy, and explained at length New Zealand's readiness to go along with other members of the League in this respect, should the majority decide as such. The Chinese envoy, Dr. Wellington Koo, pointed out that the League helped foment the present crisis because it had refrained from condemning Japan. The Iranian envoy also indicated that no treaty could be operational unless a spirit of truth prevailed in the assembly. The Spanish envoy added that it was not the weakness of the covenant per se that had failed to save Ethiopia. It was good in and of itself. What proved to be bad was, he exclaimed, the means adopted to enforce the covenant. The Soviet envoy, Monsieur Maxim Litvinov, criticized the League for failing to impose sanctions soon after Ethiopia and Italy found themselves in conflict before the situation escalated into serious trouble. He added that a few countries had imposed the proposed sanctions, but with no visible result. Since the League had earned the confidence of even non-member countries, had the sanctions been strong from the outset, any aggressor would have been deterred. However, the handling of the sanctions was not comprehensive enough and created the present problem. He reminded all member countries that, even now, in view of Article 16, they should realize the obligations by which they were bound and beyond imposing sanctions should provide military assistance. The South African envoy, Mr. Charles Tewater, stressed that the sanctions which were imposed on the aggressor state should not be lifted, and stated that it was not enough to pass resolutions concerning the relations between governments. We should be able to demonstrate our courage by translating them into practice. If we violate the resolutions we pass and do not put them into practice, would not it be better for the member countries to give up their collective efforts altogether? He added. The English envoy, Sir Anthony Eden, said, "Yesterday we listened to the majestic speech of the Emperor of Ethiopia. The speech did not fail to move the hearts of each one of us. Surely, we had imposed economic and financial sanctions on the aggressor, but it did not work. Only military force can alter the situation in Ethiopia at this moment. But I do not think the current international situation will allow us to use military force. All the same, we have seen that the sanctions did not work, and it is better to lift them. For the time being, I need only to remind the League not to recognize Italy's victory. The Canadian envoy, Mr. Vincent Massey, stated that Canada had imposed the proposed sanctions on Italy, but suggested that economic sanctions be lifted since they were not strong enough, and since their continuation would not be of any value in bringing about the desired result. The Austrian envoy, Mr. Emmerich Pflug, the arch supporter of the fascist government, said, "Italy is a country inspired by the principles of the League. It is also the herald of the sanctified good news of civilization." The Hungarian envoy voiced similar collaborative opinions. The economic sanctions bore no fruit because Britain and France feared that strict imposition would spur Italy into joining Hitler, the man who had armed Nazi Germany and who had begun harassing European democracies. Thus, the economic sanctions were imposed half-heartedly and timidly. One peculiar problem was that, if England used its navy to impose an oil embargo, such an action was presumed to lead to misunderstandings with America over the freedom of sea traffic. For this and other reasons, it remained impossible to stop Italy's aggression. We, on our part, prepared 2 draft resolutions to be presented by our delegates to the Assembly and delivered them to the General Secretary of the League via the leader of our delegation, the Jazmash Nazibu Zamanuel. First, if a country were to be subdued and occupied by force of arms, let not the government of the occupier be recognized. Second, since in accordance with Article 16 of the Charter of the League of Nations, Ethiopia was entitled to receive assistance, let the Assembly, in consultation with the Finance Committee of the League, and in agreement with the capacity which the Ethiopian government claims to have, support and approve of a loan of £10 million to Ethiopia under the guarantee of the member states. That same day, the French envoy presented a draft resolution containing such ideas as lifting the economic sanctions and accepting the annexation of Ethiopia to Italy as a fait accompli. The next morning, these resolutions were presented to the General Assembly, which, without discussion or objection, upon the recommendation of the President, referred the matter to a committee which was scheduled to meet in the evening. After the committee had deliberated, the communiqué which came out the next morning disclosed that the suggestions of the French envoy had been criticized by the small nations, and since the sentence, which ostensibly recognized Ethiopia's annexation by Italy, weakened Article 16, modification was suggested. The committee did not complete its assignment and was instructed to meet on Saturday, Senate 27, July 4th at 9 a.m., shortly before the General Assembly was scheduled to meet at 2 p.m. Our envoys opposed the tight schedule in order to avoid hasty decisions. According to the standing regulations of the Assembly, notice should have been given before any decision was to be taken. As we learned from our delegates, a decision was made to call upon each country to vote on the recommendation submitted to the delegates, and it was felt that all were inclined to betray Ethiopia. On the issue of lifting the sanctions, Mexico opposed the details of the draft resolution and walked out of the meeting. The countries present were called, in alphabetical order, to cast their votes. 44 voted in support of the lifting of the sanctions. Ethiopia opposed, and 4 countries abstained. The president of the committee announced that the proposal of the General Committee, that is that Ethiopia already had been annexed to Italy, was rejected owing to lack of support. Then he reported that the £10 million loan that we requested had been voted upon, and 23 countries opposed, 1 country supported, and 25 countries abstained. The first Geneva judgment ended in this manner, and the next meeting was scheduled for September 21, 1936. Mussolini, on his part, gave the following long speech about the sanctions that had been imposed on Italy. This is the speech by Mussolini. The fact that the whole world conspired against Italy was an irrational act, and there is something that those who live in Britain should know. That is the fact that the so-called League of Nations is an empty and defunct machine when it comes to dispute between Italy and Ethiopia. Italy's glorious deed will be recorded only when the dispute between Italy and Ethiopia is settled outside the confusion of the League of Nations. I have dismantled the government of Ethiopia. The representatives of a vanquished country should not be present in the Geneva Assembly. We have not forgotten that the League levied an unprecedented punishment on the Italian people. We will not forget it in the future. The League, intended to decimate the people, the households and children by starvation. It also attempted in vain to obstruct the efforts of our military, which was on a civilizing mission. It did not succeed, however, since the League was confronted by the formidable unity of the Italian people, which is ready to sacrifice anything and is able to fight even against 52 countries. Hereafter, it should not be necessary to involve the League of Nations in the remaining political efforts to bring peace. In 1935 AD, we concluded an agreement with France. While an expansion of the agreement along the path of genuine friendship was being considered, the issue of sanctions came about. We were a bit disappointed at the sanctions. When this happened, the winter was just beginning. The winter passed. Spring came. Our victory came with the spring. Yet the sanctions remained strictly in force. 2 months after we entered Addis Ababa, the sanctions were still in force. France was still referring to the old records of the League and continued to believe that the previous government of the Lion of Judah was alive. However, except in the records of the League, the truth is that due to our victory, the Emperor's government has expired. I leave the reader to judge what the consequences of Mussolini's threat might have entailed had not God, in his kindness, changed the situation. At the time, the possibility for peace hinged upon the guarantee of collective security as provided in the regulations and procedures of the League. Mussolini, however, invaded Ethiopia and began to jeer at and insult the League of Nations, saying its charter and procedures were useless pieces of paper and that the League was a worthless forum for bickering. As the result of these abusive and inflammatory words, many countries began to shiver visibly. After this, we returned to London from Geneva. We received the necessary assistance from the people and authorities of England who showed us hospitality during our hard times. Deciding to make our residence at Bath, we bought a house called Fairfield, and with renewed vigor continued our struggle. A number of English people provided us with sound friendship in our diplomatic struggle by condemning the aggressor. Even earlier, in 1928 EC, 1935 to 1936, when Pierre Laval, then the French premier, made a clandestine agreement with Mussolini on matters which involved Ethiopia, they had expressed their friendship. It is a matter of recent memory that many English people rejected the idea which the former British Foreign Secretary Samuel Hoare proposed with Laval to stop the war, because they thought the terms were not only favorable and rewarding for the aggressor, but also supportive of of the atrocities it had perpetrated. Later, the majority of the people did not hold back from supporting and sympathizing with us in our struggle. Initially, an organization named the Abyssinia Association was set up and began functioning to make financial contributions to Ethiopian refugees in order to help them in their daily needs. Under the editorship of Mrs. Sylvia Pankhurst, a weekly newspaper entitled New Times and Ethiopian News was established and published every Saturday. This newspaper helped us loudly to voice Ethiopia's woes and to capture a worldwide audience. Its service was so great that we would never forget the good deeds of Mrs. Sylvia Pankhurst. When we went to England and lived there, we relied on God and counted on the assistance of the English people and did not need any protector for our life. Our faith in God was firm, and our belief remained certain that one day, in His righteous judgment, He would bestow victory on us. Although we were the leader of 15 million people, to achieve the goal of our mission, we used to appear in various places and where many people were gathered to explain about the yoke of misery that had fallen on my country and people. Yeah, I think I can stop there, So the moment of judgment, you understand? Well, the world's conscience was being judged. Yeah. Now, what the relevance? Just this time. The aftermath of this was that the world was plunged into war. They call it World War II. Because those who colluded against Ethiopia, they were no longer friends. Yeah, them start fighting over the money. Yeah. So we say follow the money in everything. You understand what I say to you? Yeah, because we have to know what level of interaction we should have with this money thing. That's why, you understand? Not to glorify it as an object, but to know within the righteous kingdom, the kingdom of heaven and earth, what part should money really play? You understand? It must surely be limited. It should not be as engrossing as it is now, whereby to even be able to identify that you have this thing, you now have to be implanted with technology. So it kind of make you want to know how really and truly money fi get deal it, car. Alright then. Me have my energy. I gotta use my energy to manifest a thing for the eye. And then the eye say the eye I gotta reward I and I. Yeah, so I saw they look like the money part come in, this medium of exchange. Yeah, that in itself, that is the money. But then is what you need the money to achieve. Certain life ambitions. Like a roof over your head type of thing. Automatically you have to be spending on food from the moment you take it here inside and letting it outside of your body. You have to be talking about food, shelter, and all of these things come into the thing. Now say shelter is a thing now. Shelter is a thing look like it get exploited. Cause even then, the point where you say you go own your thing, that square where you go put up your roof to cover your head, and you're putting them and them things for left for generations. The struggle forget it. The struggle forget it. Then the man I say, alright then boss man, that thing cost X amount, and you don't have that all of that up front, What me I gonna do, I make you can get it and go and use it while you go and pay me back fee. 25 years. This is a yoke and a half, brethren. So it's like, you wonder now, how is this an improvement upon you just getting some sticks and all them thing there? And being able to say, alright, this land is my family's land. All this thing now, as an African, oh, you're born not connected to any land. Yeah, in this West here, Jamaica and these places, majority of the African descendants, they never born with no access to no land like that. Especially the ones that congregate in Kingston. Or even if them connected to a land that have split up between a whole heap thing. So the thing is to add upon that, to have no farm, a comfort zone. Yeah, so struggle for land, struggle for shelter. I don't know. It set a whole heap of thing in motion, cause let me see what going is. Yeah, man, the financial burden upon a man is very, it dead real, and it's a majority. You understand? And you're dealing. Even if then you have a lot of resources at your disposal, there is a demand. Because first thing, when you've reached to a level where you say, alright, then boom, I can afford to appease my choices in certain transactions. So it have to be this way or no way at all, and I have the economic power to deal with that. You're gonna start purchasing at a higher level, higher quality, I say. With that comes a financial implication whereby the price of the things up. Your rate of consumption are going to increase from you say. From you accumulate certain resources, the more you get, the more you spend. You understand? Yeah, the more you have to get back to make sure you can spend. Yeah, you understand? You reach to a level whereby some might it just that they grow, you don't even need of it, but you can maintain this thing to a level right now. Yeah. And the youth them taken care of. For them youth taken care of as well. Them have more than a start. Plus something are going where, you know, it a generate as well. So that's how it go. The money part. Follow the money. So yeah, I said this judgment, yeah.